Hey everyone, Tactics here, and today we've got a highly requested video where I'm going to be talking about everything UI related. I'll be going through my top UI add-ons from cooldown tracking to nameplates and everything in between. I'll discuss how to use them and then some of the features that they have in them as well, kind of what sort of information I personally find to be the most important and relevant to track, and then wherever possible I'll be linking those profiles or WeakAuras even down in the description below for you guys to grab for your own use. That leads me into our first add-on that we're going to be talking about, which is by far the most useful in my opinion because it can do pretty much anything you want to do, and that is the WeakAuras that I just mentioned. So you're going to see on the list of add-ons that I'm giving you here, WeakAuras kind of does everything else that those add-ons don't do, and in some cases they actually also can do the job of those add-ons if you so choose. There's obviously some big ones I'm using here. My abilities in the center of my screen is a WeakAura pack, and opening up the WeakAuras here, most of these WeakAura packs work somewhat similarly here. So this is Krill's, he's my co-tank. I'll link his profile down in the description. He has these for all the tank specs, all the tank classes rather, and then some other specs as well. Obviously you can open it up here and you see it's like split into different parts of the bar. You've got, this is like the full WeakAura here. You've got the abilities at the bottom, the core abilities, the top abilities, that kind of thing. And you can kind of mix and match these. So if you drag Incarn up above renewal, it'll now be before renewal in the order. If I wanted Incarn to be tracked in a different bar, I could drag it out of the Druid up, maybe put it in Guardian section. So you can like mix and match of like where you want those abilities and how you want them to show up. So there's a lot of customizability there. So WeakAuras is what I use to show your own personal abilities. Raid abilities as well. There's a really good WeakAura pack every patch that gets put out by Liquid. So the Liquid WeakAura patch, I don't use them all. I kind of download it and then take things out that I don't want or don't need. They have things like bomb soaking, Magmarak soaking, then Altharian WeakAuras, which are pretty, I guess, well known this patch as being a little bit crazy. So there's a lot of little boss abilities and things that can be used, WeakAuras can be used for, rather, and those are always available on the Vuhdo site. And again, I'll link to the Liquid specific pack here. The other one I tend to use a lot is Relo's WeakAuras. So Relo, he makes a lot of tank specific WeakAuras. So here, co-tank debuff tracking, I've got that. That's from Relo. He makes a bunch of Mythic Plus related WeakAuras as well. I think my favorite one is the attaching important abilities to nameplates in dungeons. If I can find it here, it will be linked down in the description below as well. Nameplates on, here it is, spell CDs on nameplates. He does this for every season, and basically just important abilities will show their cooldown right next to the mob. Super useful. Also the Mythic Plus timer that I use, made by Relo. I'll link his profile down in the description below as well. But as you can see, like, there's a ton of stuff here that can be used. Mass Dispel timer, lots of weird things. Quaking, throwback, taunt alerts, right? There's a lot basically that can be done with WeakAuras. Everything that isn't already done with the rest of your add-ons here that I'm going to be showing you can be done with WeakAuras. Various trackers of like when abilities are popped, so Time Spiral, Symbol of Hope, so that I get a big notification whenever that is currently being used, so I know, hey, as a Guardian Druid, for example, Symbol of Hope pop, I get a free Bark Skin if I press Bark Skin immediately, that kind of thing, right? So very useful. Lots of different things you can do here, and this is just kind of the tip of the iceberg. Moving on, let's talk a little bit more about boss mods. So WeakAuras, like I said, you can actually get WeakAuras to do the job of a boss mod, but personally I like the look and I think it's a little bit easier to customize the boss mod itself. And so there are two main ones here, and that is deadly boss mods or Bigwigs. Personally, I do use Bigwigs, so let's open that up. There it is. And so again, what this is basically aimed at is specifically showing you boss abilities in raids and in dungeons, though note for dungeons you will need separate mods for both of them. So for deadly boss mods you'll need the dungeon pack, and for Bigwigs you'll need Little Wigs. So that's for the dungeons. Kind of showing how it works here a little bit. So right off the top here, what we can do is you can show these anchors, and this is going to be where you get your notification. So you've got things like your regular bars of abilities that are just being tracked, where abilities you have emphasized are being tracked, and then like where you get the message for emphasized abilities. You can see here I have it kind of centralized in my screen. These big messages is very large. Countdown is like right here above my screen, so I know, you know, if there's a big important ability I have coming up that it's going to be right in the middle of the stream, I'm going to know it's coming, right? In terms of like what these abilities actually are, if you go in here, let's, as an example, go into Aberrus. I don't know, go into Echo of Neltharion, and you can choose to, you know, track certain abilities. You can choose to not track certain abilities, right? And you can go in here for an ability, for example, I'm a tank player, so Calamitous Strike, I want to emphasize that, so I can check the emphasis button. I can add a sound to it, right? They have a whole bunch of sounds you can choose from to attach to abilities. You can attach countdowns to abilities to have a voice count down to the abilities cast, right? And so very, very customizable here. I would definitely recommend what I do every tier basically is, you know, I go in, I look at kind of what abilities I care about, what abilities are irrelevant to me as a tank player, and I reduce what I'm tracking, and then I emphasize the things I really want to track just to kind of customize that to my own personal role in the raid and to make it a bit more useful in my opinion. So like just having so much cluttered abilities that you don't really care about whatsoever is kind of, it makes things confusing in my opinion. So I always go through at the beginning of every tier and kind of adjust this to make it fit my own personal needs. And you can do the same for dungeons, right? Dungeons is here as well. I think, yeah, here there's all the Dragonflight dungeons, you know, Shadowlands, Battle for Azeroth, whatever. So you can do that for the bosses and stuff in there as well. Again, pretty useful for that if you want to manipulate that for dungeons. But again, it's a separate add-on for those. It's the dungeon pack for DBM, and it's the little wigs for Bigwigs. So just keep that in mind. But overall, definitely would recommend it, and that's how I get all these different warnings on my UI. From there, let's talk about nameplates. As you can see, I moved downstairs here into the training dummy room so you can kind of see what my nameplates look like. And for that, I use Plater. So opening up the Plater menu here, there's a lot to look at here. But basically, you can import both profiles and then scripts to specific profiles. These are just kind of like quality of life edits that you can apply to any profile in particular. As an example, I think a common one that was used a lot back in like season 1 is to kind of reduce lag. They would hide the health bars or nameplates rather of certain mobs that spawned in large quantities, like the flowers near the tree boss in Algathar Academy, as just like an example. So the scripts do like that kind of thing, whereas profiles are like kind of the whole general thing that I'm using here. And I'll link the one I'm using again. It's made by Crow, my co-tank. I'll link that down in the description below if you want to use it. Basically, you can do a ton of things here. So there's where you would import scripts. This is where you would import profiles. You've got a lot here, right? Spell lists. So you can, you know, blacklist, whitelist spells here to show what you're actually going to be tracking on mobs. You can change the colors and how the nameplate shows up, how cast bars show up. You can change that. So change the color, make some clearer. If you have like a mob that's like, hey, these mobs always cast an important spell, you can make their nameplate like pink or something to kind of show you that. What this profile that I use does, because again, tank players, is actually changes the color of the nameplate based on your threat. So if you have threat, it's green. If you don't have threat, it's red. And if you have threat, but someone else is gaining on you and has high threat as well, it becomes yellow. So it kind of gives you that threat notification that can be quite useful. And there's a ton in here, right? Again, tip of the iceberg, this video, it's mostly just a beginner thing. You can change how buffs look. You can change what buffs you're tracking. You know, there's the threat stuff there. Lots of stuff, adjustments to the cast bar. And if you want to look at how things actually look when I walk in here, you know, it tracks them like this. It doesn't track every debuff I have, but just the ones I actually want it to track, like Tooth and Claw there, and it counts them down right there. So lots of customizability here again on Plater. It's always good if you're getting overwhelmed here, start with a profile and then kind of slowly, you know, add or remove things that you don't or do want in there. Maybe look at a couple different profiles and try and mix and match there what you like, what you don't like, to try and get something that really, really works for you. All right, we're back in my spot. Now let's talk about tracking cooldowns and abilities that are relevant to you, maybe that your allies have. And for that, the two big ones are Method Raid Tools and OmniCD. Personally, currently I'm using method raid tools here. Nothing is currently tracked, but if you open it up here, and you can look at the raid cooldown section, that's what I'm going to be currently talking about here. And basically you just get a massive list of spells here. And, you know, whatever spells you want to track, is like every spell in the game, you can, you know, select it. You can kind of adjust what column you want it to show up in. You can adjust here, you know, how the actual square or whatever it is looks like, whether, you know, you can see through it's opaque or not, how many columns you have. You can have up to 10 columns here, right? And you can adjust here. So these is what I'm tracking in a raid, for example, and this is only things that are going to be relevant to me as a tank. So I track some of the tank raid CDs, I track externals, and then I track some immunities for calling things like, namely on like Zaskarn, where, you know, maybe a tank is calling people to be immuning bombs. So that's why I'm tracking immunities on this as well. And you can also adjust this by like what spec. So notice here, I have basically prop paladin is not being tracked, right? Because I don't track up to column 10. I only track up to 3 columns, and I don't want prop paladin stuff to show up because I am playing the prop paladin and I'm already tracking my own stuff on my UI down here. So it just clutters up this area, right? So pretty, again, a lot of options here in terms of what you're tracking, in terms of how you're tracking it. And it's going to be different between Raid and Mythic Plus for me personally, right? In a Raid environment, I don't care what people's offensive cooldowns are like. I don't care about healing cooldowns, right? Maybe a raid leader would want to track those things, but as a tank player, it doesn't really matter to me, right? In a dungeon environment, though, as a tank who's setting, you know, the pace of things, sometimes knowing the offensive cooldowns of certain specs is kind of relevant. I want to know when people have their CDs so that, hey, I know I can do a big pull coming up, or I want to know maybe, you know, what defensives are like. It's like, hey, if I pull a bunch of mobs here that do some random damage, no one has defensives, are we just going to die, right? Things like that. Does the healer have, you know, party-wide defensives available? You know, is Zephyr up? Is Devotion Aura up? That kind of thing, right? So that's much more relevant to me as a tank player in a Mythic Plus environment, but it's not in a Raid environment. So in Raid, I don't actually track that, but in Mythic Plus I do, right? So you have kind of that ability to pick and choose. You can make profiles basically and track those different things. Raid, Mythic Plus there is kind of what I do. Also notes. So notes are in this add-on as well. And basically you can kind of see it over here. Again, mine is fully clear, but you can make it opaque as well. So there's a background to it. And again, this is just like things that can appear on screen. Healer notes are very, very common, right? Where it has timers and kind of counts down. Again, settings here. You can have these notes kind of show on your screen, but that they can be hidden when the timer's passed. You can have it so it only shows lines that have your name in it, that kind of thing. I don't have a note in here right now to show, unfortunately, but very, very useful. I don't know, maybe this would work. So it's like basically it just shows my name here, right? And this is going to feed into a Zaskarn WeakAura that will like tell me, hey, it's your turn to soak on the first set, watch us soak in the second set, my turn to soak on the third and fourth, etc., that kind of thing. And I can have this show up on my screen here if I click set personal note and show only personal note, and now it's on my screen here, right? So you can put this wherever you want. Again, you can have an opaque background if you wanted. And this is just an example. This is not particularly useful to have on my screen, but that's kind of the idea, right? You can have timers counting down to use your abilities, and actually you can combine this with a WeakAura, the K's WeakAura here, and this will be basically pop up on your screen here. And you can have it do a sound and whatever for when your note counts down to your timer in the fight. So this doesn't have timers in this note, but for a lot of raid cooldown notes in Cutting Edge, for example, you will have notes that have timers and will count down. So when it's your ability to cast at a certain fight timer, this WeakAura will go off and give you like a 10 or 15-second warning or something. And so you know, hey, you don't even necessarily need to be there paying attention, reading the note, you will get a pop-up from this case WeakAura. So pretty useful combo of add-ons there. As we're talking about raid, let's talk about raid frames. Again, there's a couple ones that are commonly used. Personally, I'm a fan of Grid 2. I know Vuhdo is very popular as well. So this is what it looks like. Again, tank player, I don't necessarily need these to be very big as long as it shows the information I need it to show. So opening up Grid 2 here, you know, there's a ton of things that it can show. You can choose where to show things, right? Do you want it as an icon in the center, things like debuffs? You can make these debuffs change the color of the frame as well. You can, you know, obviously have class frames showing on there. You can make things show up in the corner, whether there be, you know, debuffs, buffs. You know, this was set up as a Resto Druid, so I have some like Resto Druid spells in here that are showing, right? Again, you can track all kinds of debuffs on players. You can track personals as well, potentially useful in Mythic Plus, potentially useful if you're a healer. You want to see who's using a personal, so you don't overlap your own external with a personal. On that note, you can also show externals in here, right, on Grid 2 or Vuhdo, right? So very, very useful to show that kind of information. Again, I think probably maybe more useful for healers, or maybe more useful for people that have an external, or for people that have like a dispel, right? Those are the kind of 3 people that using that kind of tracking is maybe more relevant to. If you're like a rogue, a warrior, a DK, that's maybe less relevant, right? Because you don't have an external, you can't really dispel anything, so it may be less of a big deal for that to be showing up for you. But you know, hybrid classes, healers, that kind of thing, quite useful to show that kind of information. And obviously I tend to play those. I play, you know, tank specs. You know, Paladin obviously has sack. A lot of the hybrid tank specs have dispel, so it's really nice to have that information available, and you can choose how to track and make it very obvious, right? Have it cover like most of the frame. Hey, this guy's got a big curse on him, you got to dispel it, right? That kind of thing. Very, very useful here, and plenty of ways to actually adjust how it looks in Grid 2 and in Vuhdo if you prefer Vuhdo as well. Also a nice area to do like mouse over healing, some mouse over macros, just mouse over them, boom, heal them. And you can obviously put this like way over here if you're doing keys much closer to where you'd want it to be, so you don't have to move your mouse so much over to the side. That's party and raid frames. Let's talk a little bit about personal frames here. So around my WeakAuras stuff in the middle, I have this add-on shadowed Unitframes. And this is basically showing both my personal health bar and then my target and target of target focus, as well as boss frames. So you can see all here, these are basically all the things it can show. And again, lots of customizability here. You can go in, obviously portraits if you like portraits. I don't really do that, but change the size, change the colors. You can add or choose to not track things like, you know, for as a guardian druid, you know, my mana or my rage bar, right? If I shifted here, this would be my rage bar. I'm tracking it already, so I don't need to track it again, but I do like tracking my target's energy, right? Because that's sometimes relevant, so I can choose to not track my own rage, but to track the rage of my target as an example here. So, you know, tracking target of target and lots of things, how you show healing absorbs. You know, there's a lot of stuff here to play around with and kind of customize how you're showing, like how you're showing the HP as like a number, a percentage, or both, how many decimals you go to, that kind of thing. So there's a lot to show here. I really like customizability. And again, you can go in through here, pets, target of target, focus, the target of the focus, as well as boss frames that'll show up on the side here. Again, it's very similar. You might have noticed like LVUI is kind of like the individual things that are making up LVUI to potentially make it a little more lighter weight, and you can kind of a little bit more clearly customize things, and that's what I like about this. And again, you'll notice that a lot of the most important information that I have is clustered around the center, lower center of my screen, just under my player model abilities, so I can both track, you know, where I am, what's coming at me, what's going on around me, and all these important things like my health, my abilities, potentially, you know, whatever my target's health is at, that kind of thing. So all that important information is kind of clustered around my character to help increase my own awareness of my character, as well as my awareness of all this important information. Now, we got one more add-on to talk about, and I would, you know, not really be able to, you know, talk about a UI video here without talking about, of course, a damage meter. And the number one damage meter, at least currently, is details. Now, there is kind of a big performance thing with details, and my recommendation here, if you're finding that details is using a lot of memory or whatever, adjust this update interval to be as big as possible. So 3 in this case, that makes it update only once every 3 seconds. So it'll update slower, but it actually helped me a lot with issues with detail performance. So that's a little tip there. But again, you can customize how this looks. I've obviously made it look, you know, darker, black grayish, just the font, all that things. But the big thing here is just the sheer quantity of information it has available to you. So if you look here, right, look at damage, right? You can track, you know, damage taken, damage done, friendly fire damage. There's tons of stuff here. Healing, right? You can track, you know, overhealing, healing taken, healing done. There's a lot of resource stuff you can track here. There's like things like interrupts, CC breaks, how deaths happened. You can track so much here. It's not quite on the same level as logs, but it's like the closest you can get without actually using like logs, so it's going to be very, very quick to kind of go and check in, because you can just check in your damage meter. Like Plater, it also has a ton of plugins, so you can do things like there's like a one for streamers that shows what GCDs you're using. There's like a threat tracker, which you see I have down here, mostly for raid, for when tanks can get near aggro and you lose aggro to the other tank, basically. There's one that gives like a more detailed breakdown. You can like go in here. Actually, I don't have something to go in here. Let's go fight something real quick so I can show you guys. Okay, we're back downstairs. We're back downstairs, so we can fight things a little bit here. All right, details are going to show up. Step away so we get out of combat. And this can basically track everything. So you can go in here, you can go click on this. Boom, it shows you a full breakdown. Hey, Thrash, how many casts, how many hits, how many normal hits, how many crits, that kind of thing. It breaks it down, all of your abilities here. You can look at all of your allies' abilities, obviously, if you're in a party. And this works for healing as well, right? And there's a whole bunch of information here that is exceptionally useful, like your targets, which targets you did the most damage to. Obviously, if there's only one training dummy in here, but if there are more mobs, it would list them there, right? What kind of buff uptime? You can see like the uptime on various buffs and abilities here. Again, it's going to be weird because I went in for like 2 seconds and did things, but there's a lot of information that details can provide to you very, very quickly, right? Obviously, you can find all this information in logs as well, but that requires you to either be live logging or, do it after the fact. And this lets you get maybe some information faster. Again, not the same level of information that logs will provide you, but very, very good, right? Better than pretty much any other add-on out there. So definitely recommend using that. Again, the one downside is it's a little bit heavier than a lot of other add-ons. I think this actually might be my heaviest add-on. That and WeakAuras are probably my two heaviest. But again, the 3-second interval update helps a lot. So would recommend trying that out. But there we have it, guys, my top UI add-ons and what they do. Hopefully you found this video useful, and if you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more videos like it, including very soon a video where I'll be talking about the basics of using Warcraft logs to improve your own personal gameplay. Also, don't forget, links to the various add-on profiles or WeakAuras that I have are down in the description below if you want to check those out. As always, I have to give a massive thank you to all of my supporters over on Patreon. It means a lot. Otherwise, I appreciate all of you guys watching, and I'll see you in the next video.